Were it not for the Space Museum sign on this building in Bonne Terre, Missouri, you'd never guess what's inside. An extensive and impressive collection of space and space-related memorabilia. It's billed as the largest private collection of its kind in the nation.
The collection overran the house and my wife's patience. And finally she said, you know, it was just a natural move to be able to open the museum and share it with the public.
Museum founder Earl Mullins started collecting more than 30 years ago, and he has a lot to show for it. In fact, the hundreds of items on display represent just 1/3 of his inventory. Our tour began at a display of toy ray guns inspired by science fiction films and TV shows.
The oldest that is on display is the 1938 Buck Rogers atomic pistol, and it was made by the Daisy BB Gun Company. Everybody got into the act. All of the commercial manufacturers got into the act and wanted to feed this appetite for space.
Star Trek fans will appreciate this phaser from the late 1960s, and aficionados of Star Wars might recognize the Imperial blaster made a few decades later.
The Space Mobile is one that's very, very rare. We've actually not been able to find another copy of it anywhere. Most people will recognize the Jetsons, the Spaceship Commander spacesuit. And the remarkable thing about this is that there's actually a label on the inside that says that it is made by a revolutionary space-age material, and that space-age material is vinyl, plastic, which we take for granted these days, but at that time, it was kind of cutting edge.
Another gallery is devoted to the early years of the space program. There are portraits of the Mercury 7 astronauts, the first Americans in space, and artifacts from the Mercury and Gemini missions.
There's a lot of museums who covet this particular piece. Is a model of the Mercury spacecraft. That was our first manned spacecraft. It was built by the McDonnell Corporation in St. Louis. And this, if not the first, was one of the first in the evolution of those vehicles that took us to space.
Which brings us to this model of one of the Saturn rockets used to send astronauts to the moon in the Apollo program.
There has never been a larger or more complicated vehicle in the world ever built than the Saturn rocket. The Saturn rocket was 363 feet tall. It weighed 6.5 million pounds, and 6 million pounds of that was fuel.
Models of the International Space Station and the ill-fated Columbia Space Shuttle are on display too. Mullins says the museum is one of 3 agencies in the state of Missouri authorized to receive NASA artifacts. There's even a small section devoted to Soviet spaceflight.
That is a rocket launch key that they used to launch their Vostok and Soyuz rockets. It was just like a automobile key. You would put it in, turn it, and that would enable the circuits and allow the rockets to fly.
But what's that book of Russian poetry doing there?
You'll see a very special signature there, and that's Yuri Gagarin's signature, the first man ever to fly in space.
The Space Museum gets a thumbs up from Lowell Grissom, brother of the late astronaut Virgil Gus Grissom.
Well, I think Earl has done a tremendous job here. He has so many artifacts that people just wouldn't believe would be in a museum of this size. And he's quite an interesting individual to be around. He knows an awful lot about space, and as he says, he's a space cadet.
In the political and public debate over the future of space exploration, Earl Mullins believes wholeheartedly in traversing the final frontier.
Kind of in the words of Jim Lovell. Jim said it wasn't magic that took us to the moon, we just decided to go. We as a nation need to decide to continue to explore and expand and grow, because if we're not going forward, we're going backward. In my opinion, space exploration is the epitome of that reach forward.
We're going to stop at the sun first. Every solar system has to start with the sun. That's the heart of it all.
Stephen Walker's enthusiasm for space led him down a different path, one that runs along the Del Mar Loop. He's the creator of Planet Walk, The outdoor installation is a walkable scale model of the solar system.
The way it's designed is such that when you first come to the planet walk, assuming you start at the beginning, you'll see the sun station, and you'll see the sun is represented by this orange globe. It's about 10 3/4 inches in diameter, and everything from here on down is scaled accordingly. The distance between the planets and the size of the planets in relation to the sun are all scaled as we go in direct, exact proportion to the actual solar system. So starting here at the Moonrise Hotel, you'll see the sun station, and the inner planets are pretty well clustered here along this first block up to Skinker. Then things start to spread out a little bit more with the outer planets. Things get pretty distant. We don't include Pluto. We come up about another 1,000 feet or so beyond Neptune. But I didn't include dwarf planets like Pluto because the International Astronomy Union decided that that's a different classification of planets, so we're not going to include all the dwarf planets. There's really a lot of them. Mercury, the fastest planet to go around the sun. And the stations will give those indications too, how long it takes for the planet to orbit the sun. Statistics like this: the distance from the sun, from the Earth, the diameter, length of day. It rotates very slowly. It takes 176 Earth days for Mercury to go around. So it's a long day, and you're going to spend a lot of time in the sun on Mercury, I'm afraid. A year is only 88 days long. Temperature is very high, 333 degrees average temperature on Mercury. And this is what everyone likes, I think, here is if you have a diet plan in mind, you want to go to Mercury and implement your diet plan because you'll only weigh about a third of what you weigh on Earth.
And so we went to Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and ended at Neptune in front of Cicero's restaurant. So what inspired Walker, who's a graphic designer, to launch the installation in the first place?
One particular day I came across a website for the Sagan Planet Walk, which was built in Ithaca, New York, in honor of Carl Sagan, who taught there at Cornell University. So that planet walk is similar in size and scope to this one. And so I thought maybe it would be interesting to put a planet walk together for my hometown, for St. Louis. And so I started sketching out models and looking for a place to put it because I wanted the planet walk to have an easy to follow linear path. It had to have a long, uninterrupted stretch of roadway that we could use. And I looked around and saw that the loop had that same linear pathway. It's an active, vibrant population, diverse population, educated and kind of into things of this sort. And of course, the Moonrise Hotel was in the process of being constructed at the time I came across the loop map that I was looking at. So I thought it was natural to pursue it with Joe Edwards, see if he'd like to consider putting this up at the Moonrise to begin with and stretching down the length of the loop.
What we concentrate on is backyard astronomy, Astronomy 101.
David Ritchie is Associate Director of St. Louis's McDonald Planetarium.
Everybody has their specific questions and interests, and we try to provide people with the knowledge that they need so they can go outside and do some stargazing on their own. This particular poster here shows what this galaxy looks like. The middle image is from Hubble, so that's an optical image. That's what it looks like. But then you have the infrared look and the X-ray look, and this allows astronomers a lot more information in studying star formation and how these galaxies actually come together.
Speaking of Hubble, the space telescope and observatory that revolutionized astronomical research, Ritchie enjoys reminding planetarium visitors that Hubble is named in honor of Missouri-born Edwin Powell Hubble. Discoveries by the early 20th century astronomer revealed the universe contains galaxies beyond that of Earth's, and his formulation of Hubble's law in 1929 proved the universe was expanding.
Our star projector is by far one of the highest technologically advanced projectors in the country.
And when David Ritchie uses it to recreate a star-filled sky, the wow factor is strong.
If you have the ability to get out into the country 2 hours away from any lights, you're going to see a beautiful sky. If you don't have that ability, come to the planetarium and see what it's supposed to look like.
If it ignites your imagination, Earl Mullins at the Space Museum wants you to take note of the inscription on a drawing of the space shuttle and a young John Glenn.
It may be that those who dream the most do the most. That is a motto that we live by here at the museum. We want to encourage people to dream, be innovative, stretch the boundaries, grow toward the future, be all they can be with those gifts that they're given.